I went to community college in my hometown, and also used to work a part-time job at a hardware store that was just down the street from my college. And my house was only a few blocks away, so everything was close by. On a stormy Friday night in September, I was driving back from working a late shift at the store since my fellow employee who had been meant to work that shift called in sick at the last minute. So I had to spend about an extra hour and a half restocking shelves by myself. I was utterly exhausted and I could barely keep my eyes open while driving, which in retrospect was pretty unsafe for the current condition. It was raining cats and dogs out there, and lightning frequently streaked across the dark sky. I live alone and it was late, so I was not in the mood to go home and cook. There was a Burger King just a block away from my house, so I figured I'd stop there to order a quick takeout meal. I found myself really needing to take a leak as well, so I figured I'd park and go inside to order and use the bathroom. I ran through the pouring rain to the front door of the Burger King, ordered my meal to go, and moved hastily to the bathroom. I shut the door behind me and went to the urinal at the end. Then there was the loudest crash of lightning I've ever heard, followed by the entire bathroom going dark. The buzz of the fluorescent lights ceased as the entire bathroom was plunged in darkness. The only sound now was the muffled rain against a tiny window at the end of the bathroom and thunder rumbling outside. I couldn't make out the bathroom door anymore. It seemed that the power for the entire building had shut off. It gave me a fright admittedly, but it wasn't unheard of. My area gets really bad thunderstorms and oftentimes power will be cut off randomly. I finished peeing, washed my hands, and groped through the darkness until I found the door handle. But the door wouldn't budge. I pulled with all my might, but it must have been locked. I knocked loudly and called out that someone was in here. I couldn't imagine why it might have been locked. I stood there for a second, growing more impatient, not hearing a sound from outside the door. There had been no other customers when I entered, and I doubted any of the employees could hear me. My only question was why the hell the door was locked. Then I heard another sound over the rain outside. I had to listen for a second, but I swear to God I was hearing the horrific sound of some woman humming and chuckling. Coming from the other side of the bathroom. They weren't pleasant chuckles either. They sounded sinister. I could start to feel a cold sweat on my body as a pain entered my stomach. Seconds later, I heard the terrifying sound of a stall door crashing open and something skittering quickly across the tiled floor straight towards me. Then there was a loud zapping sound as the lights flickered back on. About 3 feet away from me was a pair of black boots facing me, but with nobody in them. The stall door at the far end was also open, which I knew it hadn't been when I entered. The door behind me clicked and opened, and I was greeted by an employee. She apologized and told me there had been a power outage, and one of her fellow employees had locked the bathroom due to it being close to closing time, unaware that anyone was in it. I picked up my food and drove home. By far the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. I never mentioned any of it to the employee just because I was questioning my sanity at that moment. Looking back, I know for a fact what I saw and heard was real. It still gives me chills thinking about it. In early 2013, when I was 7 years old, my parents were driving me and my cousin to visit extended family in the next state over for a Christmas reunion. The drive back was a long one, lasting about 6 hours and continuing deep into the night. I remember I was nearly dozing off in the back seat of the car when I perked up, hearing my dad mention he saw a sign for a Burger King at the next exit, and that he'd get off and treat us to some fast food. He pulled off the exit into this industrial area devoid of any people, with dark office buildings all around, apart from a post office, gas station, church, and the Burger King, which were all in the same area. Beyond that and past the highway was just flat desert. We parked and entered the Burger King. It was also empty and there was only one cashier. After my parents ordered food, my cousin and I ran to the huge indoor play place and started crawling through the plastic tunnels, winding around towards the ceiling. We reached the tube at the top, and then my cousin excused himself, saying he needed to use the bathroom. He He slid out of the tunnel and descended a ladder to the floor and exited the place room. The last sound was the large door crashing shut and then dead silence. I was there for about a minute when I started to get really afraid. I wasn't lying when I said it was dark in those tunnels, and now that I was alone, my young imagination was going wild, making me think I was seeing things moving in the shadows around the tubes. Then I started getting the ominous feeling that I wasn't alone in those tunnels. Eventually it became too much for me to bear, and I started winding my way back down the tunnels on my hands and knees. I made it ground level into a four-way intersection in the tunnels. To my right was a slide I could go down to exit the room. As I was making my way towards the intersection, I saw something in the tube straight ahead. Something moving in the shadows, something I knew for a fact was real. I stopped dead in my tracks. I was so scared of whatever it was that seemed to be moving down there. I could also hear it scraping against the plastic tube walls. I just stood there frozen, trying to hide in the dark and suppress my breathing so as to not be revealed. Whatever it was moving down there soon came into view. Straight across from me, emerging from the darkness and crawling straight towards me, was some old man. A Caucasian old man with long, unkempt white hair that was dragging along the floor, and a filthy white t-shirt with a manic smile and this crazy look in his eyes as he was coming straight towards me. I must have had some adrenaline boost from fear kick in, because I'm not kidding when I say I turned around and crawled faster than I knew was humanly possible, all the way back up the tunnels for a few minutes until I found some ladder leading out of the tubes, which I climbed down and ran out of the place area. I looked back through the windows to the dark room, but I couldn't see anything in there. I didn't say anything about it as my cousin returned from the bathroom. We finished our meal and left. But I couldn't stop thinking about it the rest of the drive home. To this day, I still sometimes wonder if that apparition was my fear manifesting into some hallucination, but remembering the look on that old man's face as he came crawling towards me, I doubt any child's rampant imagination could cook up anything that horrifying. I was a young, broke teenager working minimum wage night shifts at a Burger King that was just on the outskirts of my city. I live in a city in Ohio where the popular demographic is people in poorer households, so working nights at a fast food restaurant in that type of area. Obviously, I had my fair share of encounters with weird people. This one definitely takes the cake, though, as I never experienced anything I'd actually considered life-threatening up until this experience, which happens to have been my sole motivation for quitting that job. It was after midnight and I was working the drive-thru window. No one had come through it for about half an hour, so I was just kind of sitting there playing games on my phone when a knock on the glass to my right nearly gave me a heart attack. I looked up to see some disheveled-looking guy standing outside the drive-thru window. He had this kind of spacey look in his eyes, like he was looking at me, but at the same time it looked like he was looking past me. He had this toothy smile plastered on with disgusting looking teeth. One red flag was the fact that this guy wasn't in a car, so I had no clue where he could have come from. This Burger King wasn't in a really remote area, just off a highway exit, and all that was around was forest for a few miles. I wasn't really thinking about that at the moment, but I knew well enough not to open the window. I yelled to him through the glass that I wasn't going to serve him if he wasn't in a vehicle. He responded saying he just needed to use a phone and asked if we had one he could use. I said we were closed and he couldn't use it. No way in hell I was letting this guy in the restaurant. I was literally the only person working there at the moment apart from my manager in the back, since only the drive-thru was open. He stared at me for a few seconds longer, then turned to the right and walked away. I didn't watch him go, I just went back to playing games on my phone. An hour later I was out in front of the store cleaning up when I picked up on something disturbing. I could see the silhouette of someone standing outside an empty parking lot directly across from the front doors, and they were facing the Burger King. Or rather, me inside the Burger King. I figured I should tell my manager, so I set the mop down and walked behind the counter to the office in the back room. The only thing was, my manager wasn't there. I took a quick look around the kitchen and supply rooms and could confirm that my manager was not anywhere in the building at that moment. She had been here when my shift started, though. I walked back out to continue cleaning up. The way I saw it, wherever my manager was, she'd probably be back soon, and I was safe inside the locked building. That was until my shift was nearing its end and I remembered I still had to take the trash to the dumpsters out back. I was hesitant remembering my encounter with that creepy guy, which had been about 2 hours prior, but the urge to clock out and go home outweighed my childish fears and I forced myself to go do it. I stepped outside around the back of the restaurant, lugging 2 gigantic trash bags with me towards the dumpster. As I approached the dumpster, I took notice of someone's feet sticking out from the other side of it, as if they were crouched down and trying to hide. Then they moved their feet back behind the dumpster and out of sight. I turned around and went back inside, figuring now was a good time to call my manager and figure out where the hell she was. But at that moment, I heard the horrific sound of glass shattering in the lobby. I ran to the counter to see the glass door broken open and the man from earlier beginning to step through while wielding a crowbar. I ran out the back door to my car and peeled out of there, pulling over a few blocks down to call the police. As soon as I saw police cars coming down the road, I followed them back into the Burger King parking lot. I got out and watched them draw their guns and run inside. 10 minutes later, they came out with the guy in cuffs. They told me he had been hiding in one of the supply rooms when they found him. The manager, who hadn't been at work for more than half my shift, was fired and I quit the next day. Definitely glad I was able to find some better jobs after that.